In the instant Gregory Hollister addressed me as financially inept, I sensed every gaze in the courtroom shift my way. His words, delivered with a seasoned air of contempt, lingered, suggesting he was lecturing an inferior. To the honorable judge, it's quite evident that my client's spouse is devoid of even rudimentary knowledge on asset management. He can't clarify inconsistencies in his business accounts because he's consistently neglected to manage his finances diligently. At this point, Judge Patricia Weston, aged 63 and boasting 31 years on the bench, scrutinized me through her reading glasses. Unmoved by Hollister's dramatic flair, she demanded answers from me. Mr. Caldwell, could you elucidate the $47,000 withdrawal from your business account last March? I was fully prepared to offer an explanation then. You paid for metallurgy equipment with records to back it up. The incident I am about to narrate is a common oversight in people's minds. Not all money launderers are criminals. Sometimes they appear as your spouse. Annually, shell company exploitation costs the United States approximately $70 billion. A significant portion of these fraudulent activities involves trustworthy partners who are deliberately recruited. So here's a question for you. If your partner suddenly started making twice their usual income from consulting, would you inquire or simply be content with the additional funds? Reflect on this as you follow what happened to this husband upon closer scrutiny. However, I had meticulously planned for this specific scenario, and Gregory Hollister had just presented me with the opportunity I sought. I can clarify each transaction in my accounts, Your Honor, yet before proceeding, I wish to address Mr. Hollister's comment regarding financial literacy. I opened my briefcase and retrieved a blue folder. Concurrently, the courtroom door softly creaked open as scheduled. Indeed, Mr. Hollister is correct that I am not a financial expert. It was due to this reason that I hired one 6 months ago when I detected unusual activities in accounts managed by my wife. Here stands Howard Jerry, an expert with 23 years of experience in international tax fraud cases. He has prepared a report I wish to present to the court. Mr. Hollister's expression remained unchanged, but his jaw clenched. From the opposite side, my wife Veronica, with whom I have been married for 11 years, subtly moved in her seat. Over the course of 8 years of our marriage, I had witnessed her tell lies, but it was only then that I fully comprehended what I was observing. Judge Weston accepted the document. "This is most unusual, Mr. Caldwell," remarked Judge Weston. "Asset disclosure is a separate issue, but introducing outside financial investigations is another matter. In this case, it pertains to assets my wife failed to disclose as per discovery requirements, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Hollister stands to argue that this is a tactic for delay. However, he also states that my client has provided complete financial disclosure as required." I interjected, pointing out that the declared total assets were $412,000, but Mr. Jerry's investigation uncovered offshore accounts holding approximately $2.3 million. The courtroom became quiet except for the hum of the heating system. Judge Weston paused her writing, calling both parties to the bench. Mr. Hollister objects strongly as they confer there. Meanwhile, I cast a glance towards the gallery, noticing the man in the gray suit who'd arrived 2 minutes prior, now seated quietly in the back row, observing the proceedings with keen interest. Howard Jerry had been meticulous when I inquired about possible parties concerned with international tax fraud linked to a supposedly minor marketing consultant. The Internal Revenue Service showed significant interest. It traced back to the previous summer, originating from a seemingly trivial matter. Veronica announced she had secured a new client, a tech startup requiring branding advice. She quoted a fee of $85,000 for 3 weeks of work. I expressed my congratulations. Dined together, she opted for the expensive wine she typically shunned, discussing how this marked a turning point in her career. 2 weeks later, I required documents for a supplier meeting and discovered my printer was out of ink. I utilized Veronica's laptop, which she kept in her home office. Upon opening it, her email was already open. The displayed message was from her client. It stated, "Funds transferred to your account. G confirms the Cayman route functioned flawlessly. No red flags." G referred to Gregory Hollister. First encounter was at a bar association dinner, which Veronica insisted I attend, followed by another chance meeting at a charity auction. On both occasions, he acted towards me with the obligatory politeness expected of someone reluctantly acknowledging an acquaintance. I refrained from questioning Veronica directly and instead adopted the methodology of a metallurgist encountering an anomaly. My initial analysis was to scrutinize our shared accounts. Over the past 3 years, Veronica had made 22 deposits, ranging from $45,000 to $130,000, each time from a different LLC with nondescript names like Summit Consulting Group, Nexus Solutions, and Apex Strategic Partners. These companies appeared online, most having been established only months before making payments to Veronica. They lacked physical addresses, instead using mail forwarding services as their base. Two of these companies shared the same about you's text verbatim. As a follow-up, I inquired about her work during dinner, expressing genuine curiosity regarding her clients' industries and challenges. She evaded questions and shifted topics. When I delicately probed, she grew agitated. "You've never been concerned about my career previously. What's your motivation now?" This revelation spoke volumes. She wasn't poor at deception. She was proficient, and she recognized when she was nearing the boundaries of her prearranged narrative. I spent $600 on a meeting with Howard Jerry. I presented him with the names of shell companies and deposit patterns. He remained silent throughout, occasionally jotting down notes in a leather portfolio. Upon conclusion, he posed a single question: "How extensive is your inquiry?" I desired all information, and I required evidence that would stand up in federal court. Howard stated his fee: $25,000 for an extensive investigation. That very afternoon, I liquidated my personal brokerage account and transferred the funds. 3 weeks later, Howard handed over a bound report with 847 pages of documentation. Sitting in his office while he walked me through it felt like witnessing my marriage crumble into columns of numbers and wire transfer records. Veronica didn't merely conceal funds. Instead, she and Gregory Hollister constructed a covert financial framework. This is how it functioned. Hollister set up a series of dummy corporations registered in Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada, states with lenient disclosure standards. Whenever Veronica needed to transfer money, she would bill one of these front companies for fictitious consulting services. The shell company would remunerate her from its U.S. bank account. However, the shell company was funded by international transfers from offshore accounts situated in the Cayman Islands and Belize. Money Howard traced it back to its origins. It came from 3 other clients of Hollister's, affluent individuals dealing with disputed divorces. They were transferring matrimonial assets abroad to avoid their spouses, while Hollister would take 20 to 30%, followed by channeling portions through his network of shell companies to make the money appear legitimate upon re-entry into the U.S. banking system. In truth, Veronica wasn't merely a client to him. She served as his money launderer. The supposed consulting fees she declared legitimately earned concealed structured payments for laundering funds through sham business transactions. Some were direct kickbacks for facilitating the recruitment of other distressed spouses into Hollister's scheme. Howard approximated that Veronica moved around $3.1 million through this system over a period of 8 years, keeping $2.3 million in offshore accounts under her name while the remainder was paid to Hollister as fees. I inquired from Howard why she would engage in such risky activities. "Were you financially strained?" he replied. "We weren't. She had a decent income. Her legitimate consulting work provided for our needs." "Mr. Caldwell, her involvement with Gregory Hollister's fraudulent network predates your relationship. The first payment to your wife from a shell company was in March 2012, and you married in 2014. Howard referred to a section marked with yellow post-its. "The initial shell company payment to your wife was dated March 2012, correct?" I examined the wire transfer record, realizing that 2 years before our meeting, Veronica was already entangled in Gregory Hollister's fraudulent network. "There's more to it," Howard whispered. 6 months prior to your marriage, an amount of $50,000 was deposited into a joint account you both opened. You recall that as a wedding gift from her aunt who allegedly sold some property, right? The aunt is indeed real. However, the actual sum she received from the sale was $18,000, not $50,000. The remaining $32,000 originated from one of Hollister's dummy corporations. Your wife used ill-gotten funds to augment the appearance of legitimate family wealth. I'm having trouble assimilating this information, you said. Could you validate all these claims? You inquired. I can trace the financial transactions, the shell companies, and your wife's role, but there seems to be a missing piece. Howard then displayed a spreadsheet on his phone. Observe the pattern, he suggested. For 3 years, I made regular contributions to my wife's accounts. In 2018, the amounts increased by 40% and the frequency doubled. Something had shifted. That was when we purchased the house, needing a larger down payment than what we had saved. Veronica explained that she had been saving money from bonuses. She was planning for something substantial, presumably aware of the need for considerable liquid assets. Howard scrutinized me intensely. "Mr. Caldwell," he posed, "have you ever thought that your wife may have married you because you were beneficial to this operation?" The question lingered between us. I hesitated to refute it swiftly, to defend the woman I had loved for a decade, yet I had already seen the evidence. I had merely chosen not to arrange it in that specific fashion. How could I be useful? You're a metallurgist with a thriving small business, a reliable income, an unblemished financial record. If my wife needed to explain sudden wealth, a prosperous spouse offers concealment. That day I drove home automatically, lost in thought as Veronica hummed a tune from her phone while cooking dinner. She asked about my day, to which I replied it was all right. We had pasta and discussed whether we should finally buy a new couch for the living room. Despite my unease, I didn't bring up the matter then either. Instead, I spent the next 4 months observing, documenting, and planning. Howard suggested patience, emphasizing that our priority wasn't the divorce, but rather the investigation into Hollister's business operations. "Your divorce settlement can be more favorable if we handle this correctly," he explained during one of our meetings, "as the IRS and federal prosecutors are more interested in Hollister's operation. If we present our evidence effectively, she becomes a key witness against him, giving you leverage and potentially reducing her criminal liability. The act is a severe federal offense, but if she complies fully, testifies against Hollister, and restores the assets, prosecutors may provide lenient sentences." "I don't concern myself with her sentence," I stated. "I worry about avoiding implication myself. You are clean. I have verified this thoroughly. You can demonstrate ignorance of the offshore accounts or shell companies. Your tax returns align with the information you possessed. In truth, you are a victim in this situation. She used your legitimacy as a disguise." This was when I grasped the true nature of Howard's proposition. It wasn't merely about proving Veronica had concealed assets in our divorce. It was about taking down an entire criminal network, with me portrayed as an unaware party who helped expose it. I spent our 11th wedding anniversary transferring files from Veronica's laptop to an encrypted drive, while she was at a supposed marketing conference in Austin. 5 months ago, Howard's investigation uncovered that she was conferring with 2 of Hollister's other clients regarding arrangements. Presently in this courtroom, I observed Judge Weston concluding a bench discussion with Hollister and Veronica. They both seemed calm, but Hollister's neck was noticeably red above his collar. Upon returning to their table, the judge informed the courtroom that we would have a 30-minute recess. She also instructed Mr. Hollister to submit additional financial disclosures promptly. To Mr. Caldwell, she indicated she would scrutinize the investigation report. If even half of the allegations are valid, it suggests troubles beyond a typical asset division conflict. As she stood up, everyone followed suit. She left for her chambers. Upon the doors closing, Hollister turned towards me from across the aisle. His professional facade had faltered. "You have no idea what you've just initiated," he whispered. "I uncovered international tax fraud, yet you labeled me financially ignorant while being involved in it yourself." Veronica gripped his arm. "Greg, we need a private conversation. Stop talking," she warned him. "However, that report was collected through suspicious methods. Any evidence from hacking or unauthorized access, that's not the case here. Howard Jerry is an authorized investigator who employed lawful tactics, bank records obtained via proper subpoenas, public shell company registrations, and wire transfer documents provided by international banking compliance offices in response to legitimate queries. I observed the moment the truth dawned on him. This wasn't a hastily prepared accusation. It was a thorough forensic investigation that had accounted for every legal objection he might raise. Hollister's phone vibrated. He checked it and his expression altered, fear perhaps or acceptance. "That's likely a message from the state bar," I said. "Yesterday you received an ethics complaint from Howard detailing allegations of conflict of interest, commingling client funds, and fraud upon the tribunal. The evidence provided is identical to what I've recently submitted to the judge. Veronica, we need to talk immediately in private." For the first time since this began, I looked squarely at my wife, truly saw her. She was carefully dressed for court today, navy suit, minimal jewelry, playing the role of the wronged spouse. "But we're no longer on the same side, Veronica. Despite our marital bond, you were never my wife in the truest sense. You were merely Gregory Hollister's business partner seeking a legitimate cover story. The facade has cracked. I now realize that you began laundering money for him as early as 2012. You saw me as useful, stable income, clean background, just ambitious enough to be convincing, yet inattentive enough to overlook the oddities. However, I comprehend your actions far better than you think. You wed me for the same motive as establishing those shell corporations. I was an integral component of your system. Hollister maneuvered between us. This discussion has concluded. Veronica remained silent. However, a voice emerged from behind us. In fact, I'd prefer if both of you continued conversing. We turned to see the gray-suited man standing and walking down the aisle. He displayed his badge and identification. Special Agent Michael Torres, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Mr. Hollister, Ms. Caldwell, I require your cooperation. We possess queries regarding offshore accounts and wire transfers dating back to 2012. Veronica paled visibly. Hollister swiftly assumed a defensive posture, even though he was now unofficially self-represented. In the absence of a warrant, we have no obligation to cooperate. We possess 4 warrants, 2 for business premises, 2 for residences. Your office is being searched at this moment, Mr. Hollister. Agents are executing a warrant at Ms. Caldwell's residence concurrently. Agent Torres eyed me. Mr. Caldwell, you must stay reachable for interrogation, but feel free to leave. We've examined the documents submitted via Mr. Jerry that you provided. You've been quite cooperative. I gave a nod, unable to speak. The courtroom doors swung open, admitting 2 more agents. Veronica and Hollister were led away, with Hollister persistently asking for warrants and Veronica maintaining a straight-ahead gaze. 20 minutes later, Judge Weston reappeared in the almost vacant courtroom. Just me, my attorney Malcolm Price, who wisely kept quiet amidst the disclosures, the court reporter, and yourself, the judge stated. I've gone through enough of this report to comprehend we're dealing with criminal issues beyond this court's authority. I'm postponing these divorce hearings until the conclusion of federal investigations. However, I'm also mandating an immediate freeze on all accounts linked to your wife and Mr. Hollister. Have you got a place to reside? For the past 3 months, I've been leasing an apartment. I thought I wouldn't be returning home. She nearly grinned, showing wisdom. The court will reconvene once criminal matters are resolved. Until then, avoid contact with your spouse except through legal representatives. Understood. Malcolm and I exited the courthouse. Journalists were already gathering outside, likely tipped off by Howard, who knows the impact of public scrutiny in white-collar crime cases. Do you wish to issue a statement? Malcolm queried. No, let the evidence reveal itself. We navigated through the reporters without comment. 3 blocks distant, sitting in my vehicle, I allowed myself to feel it. Not victory, but rather the fatigue that follows from holding one's breath for 6 months. My phone buzzed. Howard, Jerry, have you seen the news vans? He inquired. Yes, the U.S. Attorney's Office will unveil charges within a week. Their investigation has been running alongside ours. Your documentation expedited their progress. Veronica's fate hinges on her cooperation. If she testifies against Hollister and his associates, she might serve a minimum of 3 to 5 years. If she resists, it could extend to 12 to 15 years. With her assets confiscated and criminal charges levied against her, she holds little bargaining power. You'll receive an uncontested divorce. You'll likely retain most marital assets that weren't obtained illegally. The house, your business, legitimate savings. Although the house was partially financed with illicit funds for the down payment, you've been making mortgage payments from lawful income for 6 years. The court will likely rule in your favor and require her to reimburse the illegal portion from any remaining seized assets after restitution. I observed passers-by on the sidewalk, going about their daily routines. How did you deduce that? I questioned. Initially, you harbored suspicions about something more extensive than merely concealed assets when I joined you. After a brief pause, Howard admitted, I've spent 23 years investigating financial fraud. I've encountered numerous instances of it. Yet the intricate scheme you outlined, the shell companies, strategically timed deposits, and elaborate infrastructure was too complex to be the work of an individual alone, suggesting she was involved in something far greater. If you had hinted that my entire marriage was a fabrication, would I have believed you before having tangible evidence? It seems he was correct. I needed to witness it corroborated, tracked down, and indisputably proven. Moreover, Howard added one more piece of information. Hollister kept meticulous records, detailed records, possibly as a safeguard against his clients betraying him someday. This morning, the IRS retrieved his documents. Your wife wasn't merely laundering money. She was part of something much larger. One option, she brought in 4 others to join her operation, these being spouses of Hollister's clients requiring similar services, individuals responsible for transferring money and giving the transactions a legitimate appearance. The fact is, your wife was operating the core of this monetary maneuver, not just participating in it. It's essential to note that she wasn't merely an accomplice. Rather, she played a crucial role in its entirety. I ended the conversation and waited in the car until dusk arrived. The trial began 8 months later. Federal prosecutors indicted Veronica for conspiracy to launder money, structuring financial transactions to skirt reporting obligations, and submitting false tax returns. They also accused Hollister of these offenses as well as fraud, obstructing justice, and managing a persistent criminal enterprise. However, Hollister contested every accusation. After 3 weeks of jury selection, it became evident that the evidence against Veronica was substantial, leading her to accept a plea deal. She testified comprehensively about the workings of the operation, named fellow clients implicated, and handed over control of offshore accounts. In return, she was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison rather than the possible 23 years she could have faced. The divorce was finalized as she awaited sentencing. No dispute, full asset division in my favor, complete dissolution. The 11-year marriage concluded with a judge's approval of papers Veronica signed from a jail cell. I retained the house, sold it 8 months later, unable to traverse rooms that once held memories of a life shared with someone unreal. Howard's firm received a whistleblower reward from the IRS, which amounted to 15% of the recovered funds from Hollister's scheme, totaling $47 million upon full trace. A portion was shared with me since I initiated the investigation. I deposited it in a trust and have left it untouched. Occasionally, people question how I could be unaware, living with someone for 11 years without suspecting anything. In truth, I did have suspicions, numerous small occurrences that didn't add up. I chose to rationalize them because of my love for her and the desire to believe the best. The last time I encountered Veronica was at her sentencing hearing. Attending wasn't necessary, but I wished to hear what she had to say when given the opportunity to address the court. She stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands trembling, reading from a prepared statement about remorse and accepting responsibility. It echoed every other defendant's statement I'd heard while awaiting her case. The judge then asked if she had anything else to say. For the first time in 10 months, Veronica looked directly at me. "I apologize for involving you," she said. "You deserved better than being manipulated. Not 'I'm sorry I deceived you' or 'I'm sorry I constructed our marriage on deceit.'" Regretting she dragged me into her predicament instead of the predicament itself, the court convicted her to 6 years imprisonment at a federal penitentiary, approximately 4 years with good conduct. I departed from that courthouse immediately and headed straight for my new, less expensive abode which I had acquired myself. Howard had inquired about my plans once everything was settled. "Begin anew," I replied. "Construct something authentic this time." That's what I am engaged in at the moment. My metallurgy venture is thriving. I put in long hours most nights, engrossed in the intricacies of material testing and problem-solving with answers that can be quantified. At times, my thoughts drift to the past self who enjoyed pasta dinners with Veronica and contemplated Ruffelstering the couch. That person seems disarmingly innocent now, but I don't resent him. He cherished someone he thought was real, and there is no fault in that. The individual who quantified love as profitable and utilized it for monetary benefits bears the guilt, as Gregory Hollister discovered when he was disbarred and sentenced to 14 years. 3 other clients were penalized with terms ranging from 5 to 9 years. The IRS managed to recover $31 million of the $47 million concealed offshore funds. The remainder vanished into accounts that might never be traced again. During the investigation, I testified twice. On both occasions, federal prosecutors inquired whether I harbored any suspicions prior to discovering the laptop emails. I told them the truth. I relied on my trust in my wife, which made me oblivious to patterns that should have raised questions. The prosecutor, a woman named Rachel Kim who specialized in financial fraud cases, seemed familiar with the scenario. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, "those who fall for these scams aren't fools. They are trusting individuals, and those running them specifically target such individuals." "I wasn't meant to be a victim," I replied. "I was intended to be useful." "You were both suitable components, which made you ideal for her intentions." Occasionally, I ponder the deliberate aspect of it all. Veronica didn't chance upon me, fall in love, and subsequently draw me into her deceit. She encountered me, evaluated my potential utility, and designed an entire relationship to leverage it. There is a certain appreciation, albeit reluctant, for the dedication to a long-term scam, yet there's also liberation in recognizing I no longer have to speculate. I no longer need to justify inconsistencies or question my understanding. The facts are recorded, archived, and legally validated. My marriage wasn't faltering. It was never authentic from the start, and surprisingly, acknowledging this truth simplifies progression. Last month, I recruited 2 new staff members for my business. They are intelligent, competent, and offer expertise that I lack. I scrutinize their pasts rigorously, not due to paranoia, but because I now exercise caution where I once didn't. I'll likely remain cautious, yet I am constructing something substantial. A venture rooted in genuine labor, genuine worth, and genuine connections with clients who rely on what I offer. It might not match the life I envisioned with Veronica, but it belongs to me, it is authentic, and that suffices.